On my very first video for this channel, I made traditional white bread, and a few people asked me if I had a recipe for wheat bread or whole wheat bread. At that time, I didn't. But just recently, for fun, I was reading some cookbooks and I found a recipe for wheat bread that sounded good. The instructions were not too scary. And after doing some research, I decided to tweak the recipe just a little bit. I swapped in honey for the sugar, and I had to readjust the amounts of the ingredients because I don't need to make 6 loaves of bread. I'm making 2 loaves of honey wheat bread and hoping that I can find someone who would like my second loaf. Thanks for joining me today on Susan's Cozy Kitchen. I'm experimenting on honey wheat bread. Let's get started. In this bowl, I have 1 cup of whole wheat flour. To that, I'm going to make a couple of indentions, one on either side. So let me show you the holes that I just dug out in my flour. In the more shallow side, I'm going to put a teaspoon of salt. Pour that in. And on the other side, I have 4 teaspoons of yeast. Pour that in. Mix the salt in with the yeast on one side. And then on the other side, mix the yeast in with the flour. So one side is salty flour, the other side is yeasty flour. And then once they're mixed, then give them all a stir together. And then into the bowl of my stand mixer. Now it's time to start adding wet ingredients to my dry ingredients. I'm going to turn this on the lowest speed, and the first thing I'm going to add in is 1 egg that I've just lightly beaten. I have a 1/4 cup of vegetable oil. Pour that in. I have a 1/3 cup of honey. And now finally, 1 1/3 cups of hot water. Let that get a good mix going. 2/3 cup of whole wheat flour. Just going to sprinkle that in. Let that start mixing together. As always, there's a pile of flour right down there where I started pouring everything in. I'm just going to give that a nice little push. And this is very liquid right now, so when you do this, don't be surprised. It's going to look more like a cake batter, a very thin cake batter actually, rather than dough at this point. But we're about to fix that. I have 3 cups of bread flour that I'm going to start adding in a 1/2 cup at a time and letting them mix. So there's 1 cup. All right, time for another 1/2 cup. And that makes 2 cups of flour. And the dough is starting to come together now. There's another 1/2 cup. And now it's time to play. It's pretty dry down in there, so I'm going to add I just put some more hot water in here, and I'm going to, a tablespoon at a time, add just a little bit until it all comes together. The dough picks up from the bottom, picks up all of the flour from the bottom and the sides. It picked it up, but now it's sticky. So, as I said, it's time to play. We're going to go back and forth with a little bit of water and then a little bit of flour until the dough is the right consistency, which, you know, I want it to pull cleanly away from the sides and bottom without being sticky and without being dry. I'm going to drop just a teaspoon of flour in there. It's just slightly sticky on the bottom. Now that I've got that the way I want it, I'm going to turn this up to 4, and I'm going to let this knead for about 5 minutes or so. I want it to knead it until it's nice and smooth. Almost, but not quite. I've added 5 tablespoons of bread flour so far. I think I need to add a little bit more, and I would say this probably needs to go for another couple of minutes. Okay, time is up, and oh yes, this time it's a lot better than it was in previous times. It's not sticky the way it was. It's, I think it just looks and feels better. So let's stop. Okay, so now that we have finished kneading the dough, let's take it out of the bowl and put it into another bowl that will actually fit into this. I've put a couple of tablespoons of oil in here. I'm just going to put this in, roll it around. Okay, I've got the dough in here. It's been oiled, it's been flipped around. Oil's covering the sides of the bowl and the surface of the dough into my air fryer, and I'm going to turn it on proof 100 degrees for 20 minutes. Okay, 20 minutes are up. And this has risen nicely. Look at that. So here's the first punch down. Oh my goodness. All right. All right, punched down. I'm going to turn it, and we'll let that rise again. So I'm putting it back in here. I'm hitting my proof function. Here we go, another hour. Okay, it's not quite been an hour yet, but this has risen to the very top of the air fryer, so it's only 3 more minutes. I'm not worried about going ahead and stopping because this has risen more than enough. All right, it is time to once again give it a punch down. All right, and I'm going to put just a little bit of bread flour out on my wax paper, just so that I can turn that out and it won't stick to the paper. Let's slide this out. Okay. I've already prepped my 2 bread pans, and it's up to you how you want to do it. I like to use real butter to grease the inside of the pans. You can use margarine, you can use spray oil, you can use a solid shortening, whatever you like to grease yours with. Now, according to the recipe that I'm loosely following, I don't need this. All I do is divide it in half and form it into loaves, and then back in here for another hour. So let's do that. Going to use my bread knife. Okay, so here it is. All right, this is kind of a funny looking loaf, but into the pan it goes. And with this one, I think I'm just going to kind of roll it around. Maybe give it better. There we go. All right, this one looks good. Into the big pan. Back into the air fryer. 100 degrees for another hour. Look how much these loaves have risen. It's time to get them going in the air fryer now to bake. I've got it set at 280 for 25 minutes, but I will be checking it earlier than that just in case they get done sooner. So into the oven they go. And I'll see you back here in 25 minutes. Okay, it's been about 22 minutes and the bread has risen. It sounds hollow when I tap it and thump it. And that's kind of how you want your bread to sound. You want it to have that nice hollow sound. I'm going to let it sit here for just a few minutes and cool a bit in the pans, and then I'll turn it out onto the rack so that it can finish cooling. Okay, they've cooled a bit. This one looks lovely. And see how easily they slide out of the pans when you fix them with butter? Yeah. Let's turn this one around that way. All right, there are the 2 loaves of bread. I always find it easier to cut the bread with an electric knife, so I'm going to just slice into this one. Do a nice little slice on the end. Okay, and now I'll do another slice to eat. What I love about using the electric knife, I can cut really, really thin slices of bread. And let's see how it tastes. Oh my goodness. I never want to buy wheat bread or honey wheat bread or any of those at the store again. This is amazing. It's light, it's tender, and oh, it's just, words fail me. It tastes so good. And that's before I put butter on it. See what happens with a nice little smear of butter. Okay, now, buttered bread. Y'all, life doesn't get any better than fresh bread with some butter. As always, the full recipe, along with instructions on using an air fryer or a conventional oven, that will be in the description box below. Also in the description box, you will find links to my social media pages if you'd like to follow me there. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure and give it a thumbs up. If you've not already, please do subscribe and ring the notification bell so that you're notified every time I upload a new video to YouTube. Thanks for watching. God bless.